Bienvenido a un nuevo evento de Cátedra Europa.
Good morning. On behalf of the 24th edition of Cátedra Europa, we welcome you to the panel Strategic Planning for Emerging Markets, for which we have the special participation of Jason Jr. Nicolas Renard from University of Mayhem. We will now leave you with Nicolas Renard. Welcome.
Thank you very much for giving me the chance to be with you today. So I will first share my screen to enable a better communication. Right. Please let me know if it's possible to see.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So today we will talk about a case study that I had the chance to perform within a small German company, also called Hidden Champion, within the mid-market in China, automotive market. So in this case study, you will learn how we dealt with a competition from the low-end market, trying to get to the upper-end market where the company was dominant. And I hope that you will find inspiration to deal better with the strategic planning in the future. So a few words to introduce myself, because it will help you understand also the approach that I had for this project. So I'm 41, also 42 now, should be updated. 3 children, past experience is mechanical engineering, business development. I started with General Motors 3 years as mechanical engineer. Then I took a position in a German company, so called Hidden Champion. So not such a big company, but big enough to be world leader on his market segment. And I was responsible for the Chinese market for 10 years. My current position now is in thermal management, so completely different topic within Bosch in Germany as well. And I am currently customer chief engineer. So let's go in the topic. The context and the goals of this study, of this project, were following. So the company was globally established, globally market leader in the product segment, in the exhaust line supplier. So that was a component for the automotive industry. And the target growth of the company were quite aggressive at that time. So that was in 2016. And the study was around 2 years long, so 2016 to 2018. And the target was to sell 3 million pieces more up to 2022. So the opportunities that we had in China were that basically the market was favorable for growth, but also if the premium market was quite saturated, the middle market was growing really, really impressively and strongly to the upper hand. So there was 2 phenomena. The middle market was growing in size and also increasing in quality, so getting closer to the upper market end. The threats that we had was, of course, doing nothing or not paying attention would eventually give the door open for a local competitor, a Chinese competitor coming from the low-end market and having enough technical skills to be, let's say, a danger in China and eventually later on the global scale. So at the moment of the study, let's say when the study started, the market share in the middle market was quite low, around 5%. And we will see later on how much would be then the target of market share increase to meet the target of the company locally of 3 million pieces additional. So we had, let's say, first rounds internally and inside based on expert assessment, including myself at that time for the Chinese market. And we had the conviction, let's say, that if we develop a specific design for high performance, but also lower cost, which is not easy to find, we could reach with a 15% lower sales price a really, really attractive position in the market, and we could also block the competition while also maintaining a good profitability. So that was the gut feeling that we had without really knowing what we were doing. But let's say on the gut feeling was that it would work. And on the other side, we also had a lot of feedbacks from the customers saying that the local technical skills of the Chinese colleagues were still not as good as expected, and they were requesting more support, more testing capabilities locally, no delay from the German colleagues to answer the questions, and so on. So now the question was, is this gut feeling enough to launch a project and invest several hundred or thousand of euros, or do we need to validate it differently? So this is why I did this study, and I tried to do it properly within this master thesis with the University of Tongji and Mannheim. So basically a double diploma. So here you can see on the background of the picture the exhaust line, so the engine, an exhaust line from the typical automotive application. And the component sold by the company was this one at that time, which is a flexible metallic element, decoupling the vibrations and displacement coming from the engine, because you are not aware of it, but this engine is moving of ±5 degrees around its own axis. And this displacement can be up to 50 millimeters, so 5 centimeters at this point here. And usually this kind of component is here free, so able of moving, and here is fixed on the chassis. So the structure of the study was a classical, so everybody doing a master thesis have a similar structure in as example. We start with the company profile and situation description of the topic of the issue. Then there are some definition of research questions. We explain the methodology and the literature review, how to approach the answer to these questions. I have performed then market and strategic analysis, using the support of the literature. Then we'll review the findings of this study and discuss the conclusions and that we have taken from this study. And at the end, I would like to put now the topic in perspective at the day of today, which is a completely different world than 5 or 6 years ago. So I will start then with the company's profile. So we are dealing here with the former company where I was working, 4,000 people and around 500 million euro sales worldwide. So that's not that's a multinational, clearly, but this is not a huge multinational, and this is why we can call it, let's say, hidden champion. The definition of a hidden champion is maybe not clear to all. So this is a company being world market leader, as a market leader in his continent, at least 1, 2, or 3 position in the top 3, let's say, worldwide, and having mostly private interests, meaning so family companies or family firms, but not with a capital in actions, for example. I think one other characteristic is that these companies are not so famous, not like Bosch, for example, which is too famous to be a hidden champion and too big, of course. So this company at that time, and I think it's still true, was market leader worldwide and in China with a clear dominant position. but especially in the premium market. So with German customers, French customers, Italian customers, US customers, but of course not with the Chinese customers, so GD and so on. About the situation now, as I said before, the company had aggressive growth targets in China, because China was basically the company, the subsidiary, able to boost the profitability of the group. So the group was profitable, but a big contribution was coming from China at that time. And this possibility that the Chinese company was giving to the group to keep on healthy and dynamic were threatened by the possibility of a local competition. So this, we needed to do something about it. That was our feeling. At that time, the Chinese automotive market size was about 25 million vehicles per year. So quite impressive, and it's still the case, or even better now. And yeah, basically we had a good situation that we were targeting a market, so the middle market, which was growing and which was also increasing in quality. So that was the opportunity for us, not only a threat, but also a big opportunity. So now the definition of the local Chinese market as also described as good enough market. The good enough market is typically for consumer goods, maybe less applicable to the Chinese market for the automotive markets, but let's say the definition is helpful. So good enough means you have not the quality of the premium segment, you have not the reliability of the premium segment, but you are good enough aesthetically and technically, so that you can attract enough customers to be successful. And usually the customers are not the richest one, but also are part of the population, let's say, of the lower end of the let's say of the capabilities, of the purchasing capabilities, or even to the medium segment. So the research questions now were how to make this gut feeling valid. Basically, how to ask the good questions. Where first, should a German hidden champion supplier in the automotive industry aim to lead the Chinese mid-market? Was it really realistic? And if it should, then how could it be? And on the way, we identify some research gaps. So meaning the literature was not very extensive in these two different points. The first one was, is there a bias about the way a German hidden champion would approach internationalization, meaning the way the German companies develop, for example, these family companies, is this related to a certain philosophy which leads to also a certain behavior compared to the mid-market. So, and that is important for us to answer this, because the way we deal with the lower end is also influenced by where do we come from, how we get there. And the second point, which were not really well described, was, are the local competitors a real threat for the premium market, and how do they go up market? So basically, how do they come from this highly competitive and highly hard, so where this mid-market, where they are really struggling to survive as a company, where do they come from this and upgrade to the level necessary to attract richer customers in looking for better quality? So for the study, we were reasonable. Let's say I would say regarding the approach, we only targeted the qualitative study, and more or less sort of this detailed case study is what we have done. Based on 6 in-depth interviews with the top managers from the company, of course, and customers. We could not interview the local competitors, of course, because that's a bit complicated. But we've got also some insight from them indirectly. And of course, we used the literature, which was quite helpful, as we will see later on. Sorry for the kids' noises on the back. The literature review. The first interesting topic was the mid-market theories. So in these mid-market theories, we have seen very well understood the risk of price war and cannibalization, and also the opportunities from the growth and the good enough quality that is bringing the good enough market. And on that case, for us, it was clear that the increase in volume of the good enough market and the gap closed to the premium market in terms of quality was a real interesting phenomena that we could not ignore. The competitive theories, they gave us some insight about should we do nothing or should we do something? Because and that was interesting. In the competitive theories, they described that doing nothing, so a soft response or no response, is basically, it could be also counterintuitive. It basically increased the chances of the competition to be successful. Even if sometimes you could expect that you don't waste resources by chasing ghosts, but basically, if you do nothing, then you of course leave the door open for the lower end, for the competition, whatever the origin of the competition, to take some space from you. And when it's done, it's always difficult to get back. So the growth theories was also bringing some important information, like, is it really important to grow as a company? And of course, in the case of a product which is a commodity or becoming a commodity, meaning that the technical complexity is not high enough to motivate the customers to deal it case by case, but they can buy it, let's say, with a more simple approach. And so they search for the cheapest option, of course. When your product is becoming in this category, then it's really bad sign. It means the company needs to grow very fast if the company wants to keep profitability level. So benchmarking theories also were helping a little bit, regarding the best practices and the branding strategy. So how to handle the low-end market or the middle market without destroying your brand name or your image, which is also important. So about the insight of the literature, one was very important for me. For example, should we battle for the middle market, and how should we do it? So this diagram here are quite helpful. I try to, get back. I had some laser pointer somewhere. Yes, it is. So here you can see on this diagram the state of the premium market on the horizontal scale and the company's competitive position on the vertical one. And on that case, the company was clearly on this side here, strong as a competitive position, but on a weak or eroding premium market. And the clear statement from this study was attack from above or buy your way in. So now this is where the bias can play a role. Do you grow or do you attack buying in, meaning you find another company, a cheap, low-cost supplier from China, and you think it has a potential. If I buy it and I develop it a bit, I can be successful on the low-end market. Or the other option is I develop myself solutions for the low-end market, for the middle market, and I I am responsible for it from A to Z, and I integrate it in my product portfolio, for example. And this is the organic growth we are talking about. And on this diagram, you can see readiness to close gaps on the vertical side, and the gap between the premium and good enough market requirements. Meaning it is low, of course, because the two markets are getting closer to each other, and the readiness to close gaps is also high, because the people buying cars are now in China are even more motivated to buy Chinese cars, for many reasons, because they are getting better, and they are also getting more proud of their own product locally, which is also absolutely natural. So in that case, the organic growth was suggested as best option. So basically, the gut feeling was so far supported by the first insight from the literature. So now getting one step further in the analysis. So you tell me if I'm wrong with the timekeeper. I'm not controlling it, so please let me know. So we have, so in 3 steps, there are 3 steps. So the first one is the micro analysis and so macro and micro environment analysis. So with the pestle analysis, basically you take all the factors that are external and you use them in the SWOT analysis. In the BCG matrix, where you identify which kind of product you have, on which category of industry, you phase of the industry you are, if it's very increasing market with a lot of potential for the years to come, or if you're in a stabilized level, or if you're having a decreasing market opportunities. And then that was the case. And for the company, it's let's say the cash cows. That was the phase of the cash cows, but the dogs phase was not so far away, for some reasons that we will explain later on. Then in the micro environment analysis, the very famous Porter 5 forces, that's clear things to do to understand, let's say, to better understand the competitive environment. Then the strategic group map was also useful, that you can see here on the bottom right, to see how you are as a German competitor compared to the others, regarding the price level and the technology. And then, so technology and service, I would say, are both included here. And so you need to know, you can know, okay, how much do I get better in price level? So how much do I decrease, considering the technology level that I have relatively to the others? So that's a very important thing to know. The second step of the analysis was more related to the market position and the market potential. So this is nothing new that we have discussed earlier. So this is the share of the middle market in China. So the potential of this market is huge. In few years, a very impressive growth. So this is a market that cannot be ignored, basically. And all the customers also need to be evaluated and selected. So the thing to do in that kind of cases is really to check every customer, specifically every potential product for this market, which is relevant, and choose the right product to target. So if you want to convince a customer that they should buy your new solutions, which is cheaper and better, then you need to target the right product, not whatever you can think about, but really the right one, the high volumes one, for example, or the high potential one, the flagship one, the marketing interesting one, and so on. So this is all this analysis has been done in the background, of course, and it's absolutely necessary. So the SWOT analysis also make quite clear which kind of combination of your strengths and weaknesses you can use. And on that case, the learnings were that to develop a cost optimized and competitive components was really great, but even better would be to have this local raw material, which is much cheaper. Maybe you need some efforts to develop the supplier at the start, but you can get a good enough quality, basically, of the raw material, even if you use some more expensive way to produce it. So you can combine basically the knowledge and the local low price, and that's of course obviously a very good solution when the raw material quality is good enough for the application. So one other learnings, which was also confirmed by the expert assessment at the start, was that improve the technical level locally was also a key factor for the success. So reactivity must be faster, and the knowledge of the colleagues locally must be upgraded to the next level. And this would contribute to a better relationship with the customer. And this relationship would enable to introduce the new solutions and to be dominant also in this market segment. Right, so value chain analysis was basically confirming what we have to do to get the raw material supply at the local price with the required good enough quality. And finally, that the strategy is matching with the macro target. So is what we think would be possible to gain in this mid-market would be enough to satisfy the requirement from the top management. And that was quite ambitious, but it was not impossible. So the requirement were 3 million units additional, and taking some really conservative hypothesis of shrinking of the premium market for the next 3 to 5 years. So not being too optimistic, basically, we needed to gain from 5 to 38% market share of the middle market within 2022, so next year. And yeah, that was the target. And for this, to achieve these ambitious targets, we needed to list the costs, basically, to know how to do it and to check from which point on we would start to get a benefit from it. So that has been done very, very simply with a break-even calculation. So considering on the right side all the costs that needed to be involved, including tool costs, which were partly available and retransformed to produce the new solutions, the lab costs to have a better analysis capabilities on site, and also workshops at customers involving trainings and the presentations. All of these costs combined to the knowledge that we have from the market and the product price level was leading to the result of around 400,000 units to be produced with these new solutions before we can get to the profitable side of this investment. So, which is basically not so much, because the company was producing at that time 7 million units per year. So feasible. At the end, the most significant findings, sometimes a little bit surprising, on that case, not really, but for the innovation side at least, the incremental innovation supported by organic growth is quite a powerful approach and very typical for hidden champions, because they would do it by themselves. They would not buy their way in. It's not in their mentality. They do not even talk about it. It's not even getting on the table, you know. That's the different story with companies having the habit to buy a lot of other ones. But hidden champion normally do not have this practice. The investment was clearly not a problem for the company at that time, so that was not a blocking point. As said, the organic growth is a natural way for hidden champion. The full localization of business activities is necessary. Of course, it's always a risk of know-how transfer to local competitions. It's always a risk especially in China. But that's the rules. These are the rules of the game. And as the company was really successful in China, there was no reason, let's say, to not to do it. And also, the service offering was also a delicate point, because as German customer, as German supplier, you don't always have the cultural tools to understand and to provide satisfaction to your customer locally in China, even including me as foreigner. Sometimes you do things the other way they would expect, or that would make them satisfied. So really the support of the colleagues and of competent local colleagues is a key success factor. Another very important point is that for SMEs, for, let's say, West companies which are successful worldwide and normally come from the premium market end, it's very, very difficult to learn the lessons of low-cost manufacturing. This is really sometimes so painful that's close to impossible. I would say, especially maybe for German companies. So, and that's only my opinion, of course. It's also not negative at all, but there is in Germany some kind of idea of quality which is not compatible with the low-cost manufacturing sometimes. And so, to conclude with this slide, also interesting finding was that the local competition have also cultural issues to get up, meaning that to find someone who has dirty hands working in the lab is not easy. So they needed to pay almost 50% more to local engineers to do the dirty job, rather than going to the restaurant as a commercial engineer, which is much more popular. But the culture is more to do the second option and not to spend all the day in the lab. So for the outlook and limitation of this study is clearly, in a few years, many things have changed. And even if the solutions proposed by the company and by our team was really good and was successful, one of the proof is that the company is now doing the same thing in India. So it's a good sign that it worked. This is now really different because of this emergence of e-mobility, and now things are really going fast. So companies like SMEs successful for 150 years, which was the case of this company, can really ask themselves if they can survive the next 10 years. And that's really something new these days, I think, especially in the automotive market. So I hope that you enjoyed the presentation. On my side, I would have finished. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask. I will do my best to give some answers.
We thank our guests for their special participation and all attendees for joining us in this session of Cátedra Europa. We invite you to continue supporting the education of talented students through our scholarship fundraising campaign, Más Becas, by clicking on the donation button on the homepage of Cátedra Europa. We also encourage you to stay connected to the rest of Cátedra Europa events. Thank you, and thank you, Nicolas. See you soon.